United States and Russia carried out a historic prisoner exchange involving 24 detainees. Michigan's Paul Whelan and Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich are amongst the most high-profile names involved.
The State Department said all along that both men were wrongfully detained. The prisoner exchange deal involved at least 7 countries. Here today to break down this historic swap is Euro-Atlantic security consultant and political science professor Natalie Melnichuk. Natalie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So it's not only historic, but this was an extremely complex deal. As I just mentioned, several countries were involved. Can you kind of break down just how this all came to be and why it took so many different parties to be involved?
This plan has actually been in progress for many months. Some say as many as 6 months or more. President Biden's team has been actively working through quiet channels, very privately, trying to get Mr. Putin what he was demanding for the release of U.S. prisoners. And it was a very difficult ask because President Putin was looking to give back some American political prisoners who were imprisoned for reasons such as they were American and they could become valuable bargaining chips one day, or perhaps to get publicity. And so he's been collecting Americans who happen to go and work or visit Russia. On the other hand, the ask from the United States and from Germany was for convicted Russian criminals. One convicted criminal in Germany actually was a convicted assassin. He was sent by the Kremlin to assassinate a Chechen who had fought in the Chechen War against Russia. And very close to Germany's parliament in Berlin, the assassin struck his target and did indeed assassinate this Chechen warrior. For that, Germany caught him, put him in prison after a fair trial, and they were not interested in giving him up, especially since he's a convicted assassin. So the details had been worked out between the Kremlin and the United States. The United States actually engaged several more countries. Besides Germany, Slovenia, Norway, and Poland were also involved.
There's been so much talk about getting Paul and Evan back here for so long, and it seemed like for a while it wouldn't happen. Also, this isn't the first time we've seen this with Brittany Griner. We saw that exchange with the so-called merchant of death. Do you see any kind of consequences with this exchange now, even though a lot of us are celebrating that they're back safe?
Right. We're very happy that our neighbor from Novi, Paul Whelan, is finally free after 6 years of detention, and he spent time in a Russian labor camp. The prisons are very bad. The labor camps are much worse than very bad. Unfortunately, this might incentivize Putin to take even more Americans hostage as potential bargaining chips further down the road. That is the downside. What the United States gained, however, is the release of many political prisoners. A total of 16 Western political prisoners were swapped today in exchange for 8 convicted criminals from Russia. So you can really see the priorities of these two very different countries. Russia, an autocracy with a dictator at the helm with little regard for human rights, is trying to get back his spies, assassins, and terrorist hackers. The United States and its allied countries, they were trying to get back human rights activists, journalists, Paul Whelan, who went 6 years ago to attend the wedding of a friend. So clearly, we in a democracy prioritize human rights, and we were willing to open that discussion because of the great injustice that was being purported against our citizens and against other citizens. It's worth noting that 7 of the 16 prisoners, political prisoners, released today, 7 were actually Russian. So Norway, Slovenia, Poland, and the United States negotiated for the release of Russian human rights activists from Russia who were imprisoned by their own government. They are now free. First and foremost among them, big critic, human rights activist Kara-Murza. He's quite famous. He's won a Pulitzer Prize. He's been in Britain for a long time. He's a dual British-Russian citizen, and he was arrested over a year and a half ago after he criticized the Kremlin, calling Putin's government collection of murderers. He was arrested shortly after making that statement, but he remains a Kremlin critic to this day.
Well, so many people here in Michigan so glad to hear that Paul Whelan is on his way back home, despite the complicated nature of the circumstances surrounding it. Thank you for helping to break those down for us. Professor Natalie Melnichek, as always, thank you for joining us.